Now, what do you do if you hate the language you're learning? What a question, huh? Is it even possible to hate the language that you're learning? Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the StoryLearning podcast. Now, what do you do if you hate the language you're learning? What a question, huh? What a way to open the podcast. Is it even possible to hate the language that you're learning? Well, that's the topic of today's question. I'm going to get into that in just a second. In case you're new here, my name is Olly Richards. I have been learning languages for over 25 years, and I've written many books on language learning, books of short stories and stuff like that. And really my goal for this podcast is to take some of the deeper lessons that I've learned about language learning as it relates to your life and to try and convey some of that to you, so that if you're getting started with your first language, maybe you're struggling through the learning process, or you're clocking up your third, fourth, fifth language and you want to know how to maintain them all, I'm going to pass on some of my experience, for better or for worse. That's what I am trying to do here. So welcome, great to have you here. Now, the question that we started with today is not made up. This is a real question. It comes from Jamie OG Man. Jamie, he says the following: what advice would you give a guy in my situation? I'm living in Germany, been here for 3 years, have a good life, good job, partner. I didn't say it was a good partner or not, just that he has a partner. So good job, good life, and a partner. And I've managed to get to about a B1 level in German. So that's a average intermediate level. Thing is, I really don't like the language or the way it sounds. Now, some say that you must enjoy the language in order to learn it. But some days, the last thing I want to do is study or listen to German. On the other hand, I want to learn it so that I can lead a more comfortable life and not rely on my partner to book my appointments. What's the best method for someone who doesn't like the language but needs it? Really interesting. And I am imagining here, Jamie, that you have ended up in Germany not for the language, but for other reasons, right? Maybe for your partner, maybe for the job. And the language is kind of coming along as unwanted baggage, perhaps. And I think the truth is, that I would go so far as to say that most immigrants are in your situation, right? So it's worth considering that this is not really something new. We talk about languages here, but most people don't travel the world pursuing languages. There's just weirdos like me that do that. Most people travel the world in pursuit of jobs, in pursuit of family, things like that. And the language kind of comes along with it, and you have a choice as to whether you learn it or not. And all credit to you, you don't have to learn German. I know many people that live in Germany without speaking a word of German, and it does depend where you live slightly in Germany. I know some places are more international than others, but plenty of expats never get to grips with the language. But you clearly want to, and so credit for you there, credit to you for that. But the question is how to navigate it, because it's interesting, this conflict, isn't it? You want to learn the language so that you can live a more comfortable life. It's a very kind of instrumental reason, and generally, this is not the best foundation for language learning, right? When the language is just a means to an end, we don't have passion that comes along with that, right? And it's often passion and motivation that carry us through the difficult phases of language learning. And yet, you're listening to a podcast on language learning. So I'm guessing that there's something here. I'm guessing there's a seed here. But the fact that you're here listening to this means that you must have an interest either in language learning or in the personal development side of actually, mastering this skill. Otherwise, you simply wouldn't be here listening to this in the first place. So let me start with just a few general thoughts on this. So, most immigrants who move to another country for economic reasons don't really have the luxury of choice, right? They have to learn the language. And if you're working in, I imagine that in the job that you have, you don't have to learn the language. So we're kind of starting from this position of not needing to learn the language, which is a real privilege to be able to do that. Most people aren't in that situation. And so a regular immigrant to Germany is going to have to learn German just to get by, because they're not going to be given a job in their own where they can speak their own language. And so the reason I say this is because it's a regular occurrence, it's probably even the norm, that the immigrants move to other countries and they learn the language out of necessity. They don't have to like it. They don't even have the luxury of thinking, oh, maybe I should like this. They just get on with it, right? Now, this is not me saying just get on with it, but it's just to point out that most people are in this situation where liking the language or not is kind of a luxury. They just have to get on with it and learn it. And so what's really going on here? Like, what do these people do that means that they get on with the language learning and they learn it? And the answer is they have regular interaction with the language. Okay? If you move to Germany, and you work in a cafe or you work in a hospital or something, I mean, you are just regularly surrounded by the language every day. And I'm guessing that that's not you. I imagine that you probably speak English at home with your partner, and you probably have an English-speaking job. I'm making assumptions here, but this wouldn't be atypical if that was the situation. And so what this means is you're treating German as the object of study. All right, the language is the object of study, and so it's living in a very intellectual part of your brain. And this is where it gets very difficult to maintain motivation when you run up against hurdles. All right, and you're at B1, which means you're hitting the intermediate plateau, and the intermediate plateau is when you've got a really good start in the language, but you're realizing actually the enormity of German is apparent to you, and you are studying at the moment, but you're not seeing any results in your fluency. Right? This is what happens at the intermediate plateau. All right, and so we've got to ask the question: how do we get through this? Probably not from a study perspective, because it sounds like you're banging your head against a brick wall to a certain extent there. But what does the pathway have to look like to get from B1 to, say, C1, right? And the answer is that you have to get past the language as an object of study and make it a real part of your life. You just have to do that, because study alone doesn't make you fluent in the first place, but especially not when you don't like the language, okay? If you were in a situation where you liked the language, you could probably get away with doing, a couple of hours or more of study every day. You'd enjoy it, and that would get you a long way, but that's not the case for you. And so I think you've got to exit the equation here and stop treating it as a study thing, and take a step back and just assess, assess your life. And I'm saying this as a person that's been in this situation many times, been living in a foreign country, knowing the language or learning the language to one degree or another, and asking, what am I actually trying to do here? And often what happens is you just settle into this comfort zone, right? This expat bubble whereby you're kind of fine in your life, and you've said that, you have a good life, good job, partner, life's good, right? So why make things difficult for yourself? But I think in order to make progress here, we've got to step back and say, right, how can I continue to live the good life, but do it with the language as a core part of that? And I think the way to get over the fact that you don't like it is to put press down on points that you can relate to and you can grab onto that you do enjoy, which are not necessarily linguistic. What real activity can we find around where you are that you're actually going to enjoy? All right, so whether it's playing paddle, whether it's joining an art club, whether it's joining walking tours or Airbnb activities, whatever it is, what real activities can we find that you're actually going to enjoy that can take place in German, right? And so we're focusing on activities that we do for the sake of the activities, not for the language. The language just comes along for the ride, and then because then you stand a chance of actually meeting more people who are there. You are not then the guy learning German, you're there because of this shared activity, right? Can you enroll in the course of some kind? So if there's something that you want to learn, something you want to study, can you go and enroll in a program in German in that language? Books and reading. I mean, you won't be surprised to hear me banging on about this, but if you enjoy reading, if you enjoy books in English, then let's start doing that in German. And none of these things are easy, right? Now, one of the challenges of the B1 level is that you're at this intermediate plateau where everything is starting to feel hard, right? But that's precisely when we push through. And the more that you can anchor to things in real life that you are actually going to enjoy, where you're not there for the studying, but you're there for the thing itself, and the language it's just a feature of that experience, the better. So find books that you've read in English, and then go and grab the German ones and read those, so that you've got the context there to help you. You can also sign up to do something a little bit more ambitious. Now, bear with me here, because you're probably going to think I'm crazy when I say this, but what I'm going to suggest is something that brings real accountability, all right? And this is just going to help you exit the day-to-day study mindset. Give yourself some accountability for something much further off that's going to act as a kind of forcing function of a kind for studying. And what I'm talking about here is committing to something like giving a talk. So if you've got TEDx in somewhere around your local area, can you sign up to give a TEDx talk in German? Can you join Toastmasters and actually start to give talks in German? Now, this probably sounds like hell on earth if you don't have a good relationship with the language, But sometimes it's things like this that involve real effort and a real world outcome that just help you kind of pop this bubble. And in just the same way as, a kind of an economic migrant to the country would have no choice and just has to get on with it, this kind of puts you in a situation where it's like, right, okay, it's game time now, and I have to do this big piece of work in order to get this outcome, and you just don't have any choice in the matter. I really feel like a big part of what to do in your situation is just to remove the element of choice and make life a little bit difficult. It's a little bit like Marcus Aurelius sleeping on the floor in order to remind himself of the experience of the troops. Sometimes I think it's useful for us to do this because I know from my own experience, you can just settle into this very kind of comfortable place, and it's very difficult to get out of that once you've been in it for too long. So I hope there's something in there that helps. It is a really, really good question, so thanks for sending that in. And if you'd like some help with this, I have a goal planner, which is very simple. You can download it, print it off. It's completely free. And what this does, it just allows you to take a step back and think about your goals. What do you actually want to commit to over the next 3, 6, 12 months for your language learning? What are they going to be? Make some decisions and then track your progress and reflect on them along the way. There's this study that says, like, I can't remember, I'm going to make up the numbers here because I can't remember, you're something like 65% more likely to achieve your goals if you actually write them down somewhere. So like this simple act of actually deciding what you want to do and committing to them makes you so much more likely to actually, get the things you want to do. So if you like that, there'll be a link in the description. This is just going to help you keep going. And but Jamie, thank you. I mean, it's interesting. It's like talking about this actually has kind of made me think back to some of the more difficult times when I've been living abroad and to reflect on that. And it is really difficult. And it's one of those times where I think if we can just like, what's the expression, like pull ourselves up, like snap out of the what's that movie where Tom Hanks is like living in an airport terminal and can't get out of it? We're going to drag ourselves out of that in some way. Anyway, you get the idea. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll see you back in the next episode of the podcast.